the truth hurts if you're fighting against it. The wall only hurts if you run into it. But if you use the wall the way it was designed, it's a protection. It actually helps you, defends you. It keeps you safe. If you use the truth the way that it's intended, that's what it does. It protects you, it keeps you safe. But if you use the wall the way it's not supposed to be used, you're going to run into it, throw things against it, and all it's going to do is just break, and everything breaks against the truth. All lies, all false beliefs, eventually everything breaks against the truth. Because we live in a universe that really, honestly, does not care about our opinions of it. How many of us are just absolutely just plastered and glued to our screens right now because we're trying to escape a real world that presently exists? We get to our phones because we want to escape what's happening in a classroom. We get to our phones because we want to escape what's happening at home. And that's just a two-dimensional screen. Imagine if instead now you can really put yourself into it, immerse yourself into it, and it can feel as real as all of this. It's an opportunity for self-reflection to wonder what it is that we're running away from in this world. Well, I guess here's more love for you. What are you doing about it? What are you doing to improve your situation in this world? How much work are you putting into developing yourself, making yourself better, making yourself more resilient, making yourself stronger? How much work are you putting into yourself to making yourself so that you can actually contend with the difficulties and the challenges and the struggles and, yes, of course, the sufferings of life? Or is your answer to things to just run away from it? I'm just worried about you guys, man. I don't think we prepared you for it. And I mean that with all the love in the world, man. Obviously, I don't tell you these things to be popular, because this probably puts me in the complete opposite direction. But I tell you this because it's true. Harvard graduate student doing his PhD in mathematics, because this argument erupted on the internet like 2 years ago, if any of you or 3 years ago, if any of you remember it. People were saying 2 + 2 can equal 5. And we nod our heads, and we're supposed to actually believe something that's so incredibly stupid. And you have to wonder, why is it that people would try to convince you that 2 + 2 can equal 5? It's something that on its face, many of us would just sit there and go, no, it can't. But if we can convince you by using very complicated language, which, by the way, is not really complicated at all. It's something that most of you probably came up with when you were like in 7th grade on accident while talking to your friends. The argument essentially says there's no reason to say that the sound to, T-W-O, has to represent this. You could say the word T-W-O actually represents this. And if that's the case, then T-W-O plus T-W-O could represent this, or this. So therefore, T-W-O plus T-W-O could equal this. In other words, why do we call a dog a dog? There's nothing specific about the sound dog that means it's a dog. We could have called dog a cat, and we'd all think it was a cat. And then I'm sure like 6th or 7th grade you was like, whoa, that blows my mind. Somebody actually postulated that. Harvard graduate student pursuing a PhD in mathematics wrote it in the New York Times. And people were like, wow, that would be a false belief. We used to say that sometimes an idea can be so stupid that only a PhD could come up with it. You have to ask yourself, why is it that someone would go not someone, many people across the internet would go out of their way to try to get you to adopt a false belief? What's in it for them? Always got to be cautious about that. What is it about us that, what is it for those people they want so badly to get you to reject the obvious, clear truth in front of you? Why do they want to make the world so uncertain? Why do they want to remove all truth from it? It's probably pretty obvious. The truth is the very thing that sets you free. If people can make you question the clear and obvious truth in front of you, well, then they can get you to believe anything. People who can get you to believe absurdities, by the way, can get you to commit atrocities. People who can get you to believe ridiculous things can get you to behave in ridiculous ways. I can point out tons and tons and tons of those. A true belief would be something like, what's 1 + 2? 3. Okay. If I took a 2-year-old and taught a 2-year-old to say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And the 2-year-old would look at me. Excuse me. And I'd say to the 2-year-old, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And the 2-year-old would look at me. And I'd say 1. The 2-year-old would go 1, 2, 3, 4. After a while, I could get the 2-year-old to sing along with me. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Now, I asked that little 2-year-old, what's 1 plus 2? What's the 2-year-old going to say? 3. Why? Yeah, because 3 is repeating what I'm saying. Because 3 comes after 2. Is it true that 1 plus 2 equals 3? Yeah. The kid has the belief that happens to be true, but the kid doesn't have knowledge. That's different. Knowledge is different from a belief. You can have very strong beliefs about things, but that doesn't mean that you know things. They're two very different things. You can have a very strong belief and it could be false. You have a very strong belief and it could be true. But again, this is not the same as knowledge. So sometimes your beliefs will correspond to reality. Sometimes your beliefs won't correspond to reality. This makes sense so far, hopefully. So when you want to help people, what do we tell them? Do we tell them what they already believe? Or do we tell them what's actually true? I guess it depends on what world you want to live in. We've been talking about this since very early on. What world do you want to live in? Do you want to live in a world that's true? Or do you want to live in a world that's false? And more and more, as the years seem to pile up, that's a real question. Reality hurts. The truth hurts. That was the thing that I think you were referencing earlier, that the truth hurts if you're fighting against it. The wall only hurts if you run into it. But if you use the wall the way it was designed, it's a protection. It actually helps you, defends you. It keeps you safe. If you use the truth the way that it's intended, that's what it does. It protects you, it keeps you safe. But if you use the wall the way it's not supposed to be used, you're going to run into it, throw things against it, and all it's going to do is just break, and everything breaks against the truth. All lies, all false beliefs, eventually everything breaks against the truth. Because we live in a universe that really, honestly, does not care about our opinions of it. You can have all the beliefs that you want. You can see an asteroid headed for Earth and say, you know what? I don't believe it. Because, as we understand, 2 plus 2 equals 5. So based on that mathematical scale, this asteroid is going to miss us. Is that asteroid going to miss us? No. It doesn't care if you believe that 2 plus 2 equals 5. In fact, that just might encourage it. I'm headed for a planet of people who believe that 2 plus 2 equals 5. I need to wipe this humanity out. And so in the Matrix, the guy, again, he meets with the agent, and he's eating a steak, and he makes a comment. He says, this is the best steak I've ever had in my life, but he knows it's not real. He knows it's just electrical impulses being pumped in his brain. But that's the world he chooses that he wants to live in. And some of us will see that movie and just be like, oh my God, why would anybody want to live? No, I would want to know the truth. And I don't know that that's so entirely true. Please understand that I'm saying this with all the love in the world, but how many of us are just absolutely just plastered and glued to our screens right now because we're trying, our phones and our computers, because we're trying to escape a real world that presently exists. We get to our phones because we want to escape what's happening in a classroom. We get to our phones because we want to escape what's happening at home. And that's just a two-dimensional screen. Imagine if instead now you can really put yourself into it, immerse yourself into it, and it can feel as real as all of this, except it would actually be exactly as you want it to be. I wonder how many of us would choose to live in that perfect fake reality versus this flawed and damaged reality. I don't even have to really wonder. I mean, Mark Zuckerberg is pouring, millions and millions of dollars into developing the metaverse right now, which is exactly that. And it isn't just going to be a world in his mind where you would go and hang out for a couple of hours a day and have fun. They're setting up commerce, they're setting up economies inside, they're setting up jobs inside of the metaverse. The idea being that you could go in there and do a job, but you get the job that you actually wanted to do. And then you'd actually get a coin, basically like in-game tokens, which you could then use to buy in-game things like Ferraris, mansions. You could look exactly the way you want to look. People would see you exactly the way that you want them to see you. And I wonder how many of us are going to choose to live in that world, because that's a choice that you guys, I think, are going to have to make at some point in your lives. I don't think I'm going to. Your kids are going to have to make that choice, absolutely, 100% certain. I wonder how many of us would be fine just living in an apartment that's a quarter the size of this room, that just has a toilet and a mattress, where we could just plug in, put on the headset, sit in the corner, and then just live out in this fantasy world. Only going to the bathroom when we have to. And even then, we could probably do it without taking off the headset. I'm sure that'll be figured out as well. And I know that, I think it's probably safe to say most people would probably choose that reality. And so it's an opportunity for self-reflection to wonder what it is that we're running away from in this world, because it won't be everybody who chooses that reality, because there will be people who will be in charge of that reality. Zuckerberg's not going to live inside that reality because he knows the truth. He knows that the best way to control people, I'm not saying he's trying to take over the world. I'm not saying it's demonic like that. I'm not saying it's not. I'm not saying it is. I'll let you decide that for yourself. But what I am saying is that it's interesting, isn't it, that Zuckerberg and actually all of the tech people have said they don't let their kids use phones and iPads. What do they know that the rest of us don't? Why is it that they're feeding us these algorithms that they know are addictive? Just as addictive as all junk food. Addictive as drugs in some cases. And yet they won't let their own kids go anywhere near it, but they're totally okay marketing to your parents' children, you guys. What is it that they know that the rest of us don't? Why are we totally okay with just kind of going along with it? That's why I say that we absolutely can be certain that many people will choose to live within that metaverse. Now, ultimately, it's your choice, man. It's your life. Which one do you want? Do you want the life of reality, or do you want the life of lies, of false beliefs? Not even lies, of just false beliefs. Do you want to intentionally be tricked? Because it's not really a lie if you're intentionally allowing yourself to be tricked into it. Which one would you choose? And it's no surprise that more and more people would choose that world that we can escape from this one. I mean, if you look at what the world is like, and we complain about it a lot, but well, I guess here's more love for you. What are you doing about it? What are you doing to improve your situation in this world? How much work are you putting into developing yourself, making yourself better, making yourself more resilient, making yourself stronger? How much work are you putting into yourself to making yourself so that you can actually contend with the difficulties and the challenges and the struggles and, yes, of course, the sufferings of life? Or is your answer to things to just run away from it? And it does break my heart, and I mean that in the actual genuine way. When I sit there and I look at Jupiter, I see how many, and again, out of all love, man, how many of you guys have just completely accepted your failure. And I mean like utter and like embarrassing failures. And are totally okay with it. And I look and I go, I know who's going into the metaverse. 100%. And it's not a good thing. Please don't take from this that I sit there and say, haha, no. I mean, being honest, I don't know why many people wouldn't. What's your life going to look like? If you're already accepting failure as being an intrinsic part of your life when you're 17, 18 years old, what's your life going to look like when you're 27, 37, 47, 57? Do you think things get better? This is the place where you're supposed to be practicing to get better, to struggle against things, learn how to overcome them in a place that is going to actually allow you to rebound and become better. In other words, there's nothing that's so catastrophically failed at this point that you can't fix it, except an attitude, I suppose. And so if you just fall into it and say, well, I guess I'll just fail. Why not? I can get a modified graduation plan. That's okay, so I can still get that. Do you really think that gets better in your life, man? It doesn't. Because this is where you're supposed to be practicing getting better at things. Learning how to grapple with actual reality. And this goes back to what we were talking about last week, where I could tell you something that's not true. Don't worry, guys. Everything is spectacular and wonderful. Because you are rays of sunshine, the world's going to be your oyster and everything's going to work out spectacularly well. You know why? Just because you're you. You don't have to work at it. Just be you. You know? We can't write a journal entry, but we know our pronouns. And we know our Instagrammer. But we don't have any ideas about what to do with that stuff. Good. Whew. He finally said something that gives me an opportunity to get mad at him and dismiss what he has to say. What does he know? I'm offended. Good. Good. That's the first step to being uncomfortable. Hopefully your next step after being uncomfortable is reconciling that and getting on the right side of the truth of the world, because that's what you're going to have to live in, or not, or in a metaverse, or in a world that's created for you. Do you want to control your own life? Do you want to allow others to control your life? And that's a choice you're going to have to make. And that is more of a choice that your generation has to make more than any other generation before. That much is true. There is a difficulty there. I'm just worried about you guys, man. I don't think we've prepared you for it. And I mean that with all the love in the world, man. Obviously, I don't tell you these things to be popular, because this probably puts me in the complete opposite direction. But I tell you this because it's true. It's not a belief, it's not an opinion, it's reality. So, I can tell you what you want to hear. I'll leave that to the people who want your money. I'll leave that to the people who want your attention. I'll leave that to the people who need your love to feel better about themselves. But agree with it or disagree with it, I hope you at least realize that as best as I possibly can, I'm just telling you the truth. And what you do with it is up to you. You build rockets based on 2 + 2 = 5, or do you build your future based on 2 + 2 = 4? Your call. Questions, comments, concerns, complaints, criticisms, critiques? What is it about this period, man? That's 2 in a row they've been downers. I didn't intend for them to be. I had something positive in mind for this. I guess watch the next 2 periods. Maybe we'll laugh more in those periods. Yeah.